Hey, welcome everybody. It's Ted Pedromo, and I'm here with Bill Prater. Welcome, Bill.
Greetings and salutations.
I just love when we get together and chat. You just have the greatest conversations and teach me so much.
Well, thank you. You're very flattering, Ted.
Yes. So you're talking about how we're going to triple your monthly income in a year.
Yes. We are definitely going to do that.
And this isn't one of those hokey pokey spammy things. This is real. You actually do real business consulting with real companies.
Yeah, that's right. And I have been, Ted, actually thinking about our conversation today. I've been doing pretty much what I'm doing now since 1999. So I've had a lot of experience with all sorts of businesses and all sorts of stages and all sorts of results and so forth and so on. So what I thought we'd talk about, kind of framing it up, because we are going to talk specifically taking action, resulting in tripling your monthly income in 1 year. And so it's a real example. It's not hypothetical. It's not. There's no philosophy. There's nothing experimental. I'm just going to relate through the prism of three things. The first one is what I'll call the stages of business, Ted. Mm-hmm. And then second, talk about focus, and then third, taking action. And when we get to that third piece today, we'll give you specifics about how to triple your monthly income in 1 year.
Cool. It just sounds like a hokey title, but
yeah,
you've done it a million times.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so what's number one again? Let's get started here.
All right. So number one is that I think that the paradigm through which most people look at businesses, and therefore business owners, is like small, medium, large, or small, medium, large, and enterprise. And that's fine, but it doesn't really tell the story the way that I've actually seen it unroll. As you know, Ted, I've been involved with business schools, and I've got relationships with dozens of business book writers, and I've known partners from almost every large consulting firm on the planet. And through all of that, I've discovered that most people don't have the right view of businesses and business owners. And really, what I see is three, let's call them stages. Stage one, which takes place when somebody founds a business. Right. They leave corporate America, they find a corporate global enterprise company, found a business. That's one way. And then the way is to buy an existing one, for example, or buy a franchise, variety of ways to start a business.
Right.
When that happens, the business is you. I mean, they're almost the same. Everything blurs together. It's 24/7, and everything that happens in your business, you did.
Right.
Let's call that phase one, or let's call that solo. Business is you. Next stage, Ted, that I see all the time is what I call a boss-centric business. Boss, also known as owner, or owner-centric business. And that is, regardless of how big the business is, it could be 3 or 4 people, or 30 or 40 people, or 300 or 400 people. A boss-centric business means that the boss, or the owner, is the focal point. Mm-hmm. All decisions, all strategy, all tactical things go through this individual, and it's an incredible choke point, meaning that nothing moves unless it goes through this one door called the owner's door. Mm-hmm. And I've seen this over and over and over again. Nothing necessarily wrong with it. It's just good to have that image in your mind. So think of yourself, Ted. I know your business pretty well. You and I have known each other for 7 or 8 years, I think. And so, but different businesses end up being boss-centric for a long period of time. Nothing wrong with it necessarily. And then the third stage, and this is the stage where I like to take my private clients to, Ted, is what I call team-centric, where the business operates through the team and the owner is essentially not important. They move to the role of being like an owner. I just finished with one of my private clients here just seconds ago, literally, in Oakland, California, nearby you. lives in Marin though.
Mm-hmm.
And he is so happy in the 4 years that I've worked with him. He went from being a total boss-centric business, and in this period of time, his business has grown 500%. And now his daughter, who's in her early 30s, is the CEO, and he's now being flirted with by private equity companies and so forth. So I believe that to be the 3 stages businesses go through, regardless of size. Business is you, owner-centric business, finally team-centric business. And the way they operate is entirely different depending on which stage they're in.
So is it hard for a boss to transition to that team phase?
Well, okay, so what happens is what's going on with these people, and I think that'll answer the question, Ted. And what I see is that a business is you, and a boss-centric business, what they're doing, Ted, is they're looking for savior. They're hoping and wishing and praying for a savior, somebody to come along miraculously and show them, save them out of their plight. What's their plight? They're not making enough money. They're working 24/7. They don't have anywhere near the freedom they envisioned when they started. And so they're looking for saviors. The problem that exists when somebody's looking for saviors is shiny objects, or the brand new idea, or the latest and the greatest. When they show up on their radar screen, it looks like a savior. Mm-hmm. And somebody will write out a check, bring out their credit card, spend their time and treasure invested in something that might be good someday, but it's not aligned. It's not the right thing now. It's the wrong savior. Then they get unhappy. They get mad at themselves for being such a dope and buying something like that. But finally, a little click takes place. And then what happens is the owner starts looking, instead of for a savior, it starts looking for a guide. Mm-hmm. Now, in order to have a guide, you have to have a clarity in your brain about that you've got some sort of a problem. So, for example, if you say, gee, my problem is I'm not getting enough inbound interested hot leads. Okay, well, with that problem, who might be a guide for me? Mm-hmm. Well, maybe Bill's friend, Ted Perdomo, who is a specialist in helping people grow their entire social network. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. But if somebody's brand new in business, maybe they better think about getting a sale first. So people go, Ted, through this transition from looking for a savior and making mistake after mistake after mistake to having a problem they want to solve. And when they do that, they reach out for a guide. Sometimes the guide is internal, somebody on their team that might know. Sometimes the guide is external. But once they start having that transition, identifying a problem, looking for a solution, aka a guide, somebody that's been there before them, then they start making that transition from being boss-centric to team-centric.
I kind of think of the Ben and Jerry's example. Years ago, they started out. They were good at what they did. They got to a place that said, we don't know how to do this. So they brought in a CEO, and then they stepped back. Is that what you're talking about? That kind of transition?
Right, yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to be initially a substitute CEO, but I've got tons and tons and tons of examples for that. But the step one is being wholly committed to the concept of developing an A player. Now, an A player would be defined as somebody that's available in the market to take your job, the job you've offered, at the price you're willing to pay. That's an A player. A players might cost, Ted, maybe my experience, 10, 15, 20% more, but their typical production is 200 or 300%. So you're paying a little bit more for super production. And when you see that unraveling in front of you, it's a good signal that maybe they're better at something than you are.
Yeah. Yeah, when you start out on your own, you just kind of stumble into a successful business. You don't know how to run a 100-person company or 1,000-person company.
Right, and of course it gets worse if you've been trained in some sort of a craft, like you went to dental school or law school or welding school or massage therapy school or something like that. You've got a craft, and then when you try to convert that to a business, it doesn't work,
Right.
because the skills you need to run a business are nothing at all to do with being a massage therapist, nothing at all to do with being a doctor, nothing at all to do with being a business coach. No, they're not related. So one of the phases that needs to take place is the concept of putting on the hat of a boss. And so that's really the first thing I wanted to talk about, which was this stages, like the people listening to us right now, to kind of think through, where am I, and what we just heard from Bill and Ted, and that is, is my business just me? Am I stuck there? Or is my business bigger, but I've created the roadblock by creating a boss-centric business? Or am I ready to make the transition into becoming a team-centric one? And that gets you to what I wanted to talk about number two, and that is this notion of focus. I think you and I have talked about it before, but if you're ready for the input, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm thinking, I've been the solo, I've been the boss. I've never got to that next level, but.
Well, yeah. Okay. So, and the next one, it will help people at any of those stages. And most people, unfortunately, run their business, Ted, with what I'll call a whack-a-mole basis, meaning that if a problem comes up, they bang on it trying to solve it, or if an opportunity comes up, they jump on the bandwagon, if you will. And so I created years ago a tool which I call Pareto to the third power. Now, some people don't know who in the world Pareto is, but they no doubt have heard of the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
Now, Pareto didn't invent the 80-20 rule. He was a philosopher and an economist, but a guy named Joseph Juran, who was a business consultant in the United States, did create the 80-20 rule, which basically says that 20% of the inputs produce 80% of the output. I call that Pareto to the first power. 20% of the input produces 80% of the output. 20% of the customers produce 80% of the revenue. 20% of the sales team produces 80% of the sales. 20% of the customers produce 80% of the problems. That's the 80-20 rule. However, if you take Pareto to the second power, then you're taking 20% of the 20, 20% of the 20, and now we're down to 4%. 20% of 20, 4%. 4% produces 80% of 80, 8 times 8, 64%. So that the Pareto to the second power means that with 4% of our action inputs produces 64% of the output. Lesson number one, do at least Pareto to the second power, because you'll go from 80-20 to 4-64.
So you're
meaning
80-20,
that
you're 80-20.
Yeah, if you can focus your energy on that 4%, produce 64% of the output, fantastic. I mean, that's how people say to me, Bill, how in the world can you help people grow their businesses from 10 to 100 million? Well, we do it by focusing, not by being random and grasping at straws. But then Pareto to the third power is where the magic really is. Because if you take 20% of 4, it's 0.8. But Ted, you and I, we like to round things up. So it's 1%. So Pareto to the third power says 1% of your input, 1% of your action, 1% of what you do, 1% of where you place your attention produces 80% of 64%. And my math tells me that's a little over 51%. Simplifying it, 1% produces half of your output. So I believe in what I call a daily morning ritual, which is running Pareto to the third power to find the one thing you're going to do today that's going to produce 50% of your total output for the day.
And
So in my case, I mean, literally, what's my 1% for the day? Talking to Ted Perdomo.
There you go.
I mean, it's true. I mean, this is the most important thing this morning I did it, and this is the most important thing for me today. And I've had a full day. It wasn't that. So that's the second thing. The first one is stages, understanding where you are.
Right.
And the way to really figure that out is, am I looking for a savior? And I'm searching, getting madder and madder and madder, or am I actually identifying problems and I look for a guide to help me solve it? Next, am I really focusing, laser-like focus on the 1% of everything that's available for me to do today, and producing using the 80-20 rule 3 times half of my output? So that's the second thing I wanted to talk about. That's
interesting, because I always think, somebody said, you can only really do 3 things in a day. Like, you have a to-do list of 50 items. You can only do 3. But if you focus that 3 down to 1, you're going to get 51% return on your investment.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and every day I do that. So I just, here's what I do. Simplest, I'll give it everybody the ritual. The ritual is this. Number 1 is based on everything I did yesterday. So here we are. We're sitting here today on the 15th. So is everything I did yesterday, did that move me closer to my long-term goal or not? It's just binary. I'm not trying to beat myself up. I either did or didn't.
Right.
Now, next point is, what's the one thing I can do today that will bring me the furthest distance towards my long-term goal or vision? Right. And I end up typically in a day, Ted, with 5 things on my list. And I usually end up getting 1, 2, or 3 of them done.
Mm-hmm. So you have annual revenue goals. You have everything laid out. You know where you're going. So you know what actions you need to take to get there.
Right. Yeah, and simplistically, let's just call that second thing having goal-focused action, so that our action is connected to the thigh bone. No, so our action is connected to our short-term goals, to our longer-term goals, and our annual goals, and our 5-year goals. And if you can legitimately say to yourself, yes, today or yesterday, the work that I did was focused on my goals.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And it's good. You look back and say, okay, what did I accomplish yesterday? Because a lot of times we just keep going forward and we got the blinders on. We're just going somewhere, but we don't really know where.
Well, we're going there at a high rate of speed with lots of exhilaration, but it's kind of, it's meaningless activity. If you want to be frank and sincere with yourself, it's meaningless activity. So if you look at everything you did yesterday, I don't recommend doing this because it's brutal. But if you just do it once and just say, realistically, looking at yesterday, I spent 10 hours. That's 20 half hours. So I had 20 half hours. How many of those 20 half hours produced half of what I was looking for yesterday?
Right.
And if you can't answer that, it'd be tough.
Yeah.
So that's the first 2 things. And then the third one is action. So we talked about, here's our stage, here's how we focus, and then take action. And so I like to give this illustration because it's really difficult for people to imagine actually tripling things, monthly revenue, if you will, in the course of a year. Right. But actually, we just use a rule called the 3x3 rule, 3 by 3, 3 by 3. And I'm going to use, because we teed it up as the title, we're going to talk about revenue. Revenue. So how do we triple? We're in June 2001 when, this is recorded, but if you're listening live, we're June 2001. So 12 months from now, how can we take the revenue we're going to have for June and have it be 3 times larger in 12 months? How do we do that? Well, if you're making, let's just pick a number, $100,000 this month, is it really realistic to see yourself at 300,000 in a year? And the answer is yes. And this formula works in all kinds of spaces. But in the case of revenue, there's really 3 things. There's the first 3. And the second 3 is 3%. So all we're going to do is we're going to create a goal. The goal is going to be for June or July 2022, and we're just going to write a number in that space that is 3 times whatever your current revenue is this month, or you can use May if you like. And so then we're going to measure 3 things. Well, 4 things really, because one of which is going to be the score, which is revenue.
Right.
But one is, what is our average transaction value? So, for example, if you're in the coaching business, how much do I charge somebody for a coaching, whatever, an hour, half day, whatever or how much do I charge people for a course?
Yeah.
So that's one. And I used a couple of examples, but it could be massages or dental surgery or anything else that you want to focus on. Number 2 are the number of clients or customers that you have. So the second part of the 3 trifecta would be simply clients. So if you're starting with 12, we're just going to multiply that 12 by 3% each month, and we'll come up to a higher number. I don't have the math in front of me, but anybody with a spreadsheet can do this and see it on a spreadsheet. Just use a Google Sheets or Mac numbers, or I think Google or Macintosh is Excel. So those are 3 examples of spreadsheets. And the third one is the duration or the frequency. So if you're, for example, doing coaching, if you get a new coaching client, how long do they last? Do they last 2 months, 2.5 months, etc.? We're just going to grow that by 3%. When you do that math, the actual, and we work on these little teeny micro changes of 3%. Imagine just these little teeny tweaks. And we do that for a year. Then the revenue number ends up mathematically being 317%. And I've seen that hundreds of times, Ted.
So if I charge $1,000 for coaching,
yeah,
and I get 3 clients a month, you're like, and they stay for 3 months, is that kind of where you're going?
That's it. Yeah. So starting number of clients, the price that we're charging, and how long they last. So the price per month or per session or whatever.
Right.
And then what we're doing is going to grow each of those by 3%. Now, true, if you've got 3 clients, the mathematical number is going to be 103% of 3. So it isn't actually a whole client. And what's magic about it is clients come in units. So it's 3, and then pretty soon it's 4. So that might happen a month from now, or 2 months from now, 5 months from now, because the change is going to be very small overall. But we do that compounding, Ted, and it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 things, and that is number 1, start switching your mind to think about problems, finding guides, versus looking and hoping and praying for some savior come up and save your bacon. Right. So that's change number 1. Change number 2 is to embrace Pareto to the 3rd power, so you can focus on 1. And as Ted said, maybe 2, maybe 3 things a day. That's all. That doesn't mean ignore everything else, because but you'll find magically they get done anyway. And then 3rd is to put that into action by focusing on a single thing. In this case, revenue only, just revenue. Don't worry about how many connections I've got on LinkedIn, or don't worry about the PowerPoint slides and what the slides look like.
Right.
Don't worry about your ad copy. Don't do any of those things. Just focus on the 3x3 rule. So that's it, Ted.
Kind of like Perry Marshall says, focus on the $1,000 an hour task, not the $20 which you can delegate. That's great. Oh, Bill, that's great. Great advice as usual.
Thank you.
So how can we get a hold of you if you want to learn more about what you do?
So the most straightforward, simplest way to do, and as Ted's already said, everything I do is outrageous. So Ted knows that I'm also known as America's business alchemist, and so the website easiest one to go to is scaleology.guru. Go there and you'll get insights into everything pretty much we talked about today.
Awesome, Bill. Been great talking to you as usual.
Likewise, Ted, I always love talking to my man there in California.
There we go. Okay, have a great day.